All right. That's interesting because we often talk about development and we think of the West Plan and the North Plan. But Walnut Creek's uniqueness is really its downtown. And many times we kind of take it for granted that we have this fabulous downtown that people come to. And it's important that we support that. So not only development and plans for building out in the west and north end, but one of the questions that people often ask and was asked, expand and grow the downtown area as a known Bay Area center for culture and the arts. What could be the ROI for the long term and how would we plan for it? So in effect, the support for that downtown area.
So that's an interesting question because you're asking what's the return on investment of maintaining a solid and growing downtown. It's continued attraction. This is an interesting aside. In downtown San Diego, I mentioned Horton Plaza. It was one of the first open air malls, and it was built in a super small site. It was multi-story, 3 levels. It included originally an Irvine Market, a natural kind of grocery place, Mervyn's, Nordstrom's, and Macy's. I think it was the Broadway at first. And it was surrounded by parking, multi-level parking structure. And some of those parking structures preserved space about a little less than 50 feet of frontage for future residential, because residential was one of the smaller floor plates that could be built and then kind of as a screen to that parking. So it was an incredibly successful award-winning project, landmark architecture, landmark urban development. And it had been in place for probably about 30 years. And it's recently being completely renovated, changed, and partially demolished. And so I think that there is an evolution in communities. Part of its demographics, and oddly, throughout that entire time, the residential population of downtown had grown substantially. And so I think it's really important who's managing the tenant space and that level of quality and attention. The return on investment is, an economy issue. Strong economy, a place for successful businesses, successful restaurants, successful land development, lease rates, and all of that. Taxes, incredibly important. The retail taxes, sales tax that are coming from the auto dealerships, from all of this visitation, incredibly important. Without that catalyst of that high concentration of great restaurants, and we all know what Restaurant Row is, right? It's the one restaurant that was really successful, so successful that 3, 4, 5 more came by them. And then those restaurants themselves created the critical mass. And then that critical mass can now support the attendant retail until you come into the major catalyst of the shopping center, of the retail mall center. So the return on investment is everybody's livelihood. And then the revenues that help support and maintain that positive environment. I know that you all have your own places where you've seen them successful, but you've also seen them decline. And so staying pointed and fresh on the market, making sure that the tenants are viable and supported. And when there starts to be that change in tenancies, this party, which I kind of see as the Convention Visitors Bureau, the Chamber, the Downtown Business Association, brokers, and the city, that partnership keeps it fresh and alive. And it means, I always think of us as being doctors, where, one of our thoughts is do no harm. So we want to help, and we don't want to harm this living organism, this patient of the city. So that tenancy, keeping fresh, keeping vital, keeping on the pulse, and making sure that the services provided by the city, particularly through community development and economic development, are engaged and aware of what's going on. If you lose your way, you take your eye off the ball, you'll be Horton Plaza and you'll be torn down. So that's kind of my thought to the return on investment and that fact back to that Culver City experience, where it takes a real and engaged partnership to keep, develop, and maintain that kind of environment.
Thank you. And I think we can all agree that we have that here between the chamber, our downtown. Certainly our citizens, when we've had projects, people are very interested. And being a former marketing person before I was a lawyer, I appreciate the work that you need to do to lay the, I call it the groundwork, to get people on board projects. I'm going to kind of segue into another area just because I want to touch on it. And that is, you mentioned it, our Convention and Visitors Bureau and the partnership that we are seeking between the city and the hotels. There was a time in Walnut Creek way back when people would stay in other cities and come to Walnut Creek. Now we have a number of hotels, but obviously the pandemic has taken a bite out of things. But can you speak to a possible partnership between the city and the hotels to help our Convention and Visitors Bureau business?
Yes, I can, and I'll do it conceptually because being so fresh, I don't have the game plan for that in mind. But in Mammoth, which was a really interesting experience to this end, there wasn't a strong enough market for hotels to be independently financed and developed, and so they used the timeshare, fractional ownership, as the condo hotel model, so that some of that initial investment of purchase actually supported the operation of the hotel. And we developed this recognition that we didn't have enough amenities. We didn't have enough medium size and small conference space. And no one hotel could develop it all. We didn't have enough recreational facilities that could be used multi-purpose during a year. You know, when you're buried with 400 inches of snow, you're inside unless you're skiing. So overall, with the Visitors Bureau and Marketing Group in Mammoth and the partnership with the hoteliers themselves, we developed a program where, as the new development projects were coming forward, we could piece out everybody's kind of unique contribution to the matrix. Some included golf course, some included small conference, some included entertainment retail district settings, some included joint shared parking to support particular areas. And then it was all hubbed through the Mammoth Lakes Tourism Group, where there was not only retail participation and chamber participation, but direct hotel participation and marketing. So I think that the relationship to hoteliers is all about attracting people, right, and visitation. And so that relationship to programming, to special events, and having that kind of deep cooperation, that part is the key. And then it is infused through chamber and through all of the other associations. At San Diego, everything was really, the economy of the downtown hotel market was directly linked to the programming and success of conventions. And so I think every community needs to find either their one big thing or the multiple facets of programming that build to that contribution of success.